The larger goal of the socialist left isn't just corruption or economic confiscation, it's to force you into conformity. As with coronavirus, the left starts with the repression of religious freedom.
Lead me on.
I interviewed Kelly Shackelford, the president of First Liberty, who has devoted his life to fighting for religious freedom.
The one thing that a totalitarian regime cannot allow are citizens who hold an allegiance to one higher than the government. So whenever you see that type of oppressive regime coming into play, the first flashpoint will always be religious freedom. I have never seen anything like what we're seeing now. Now we're seeing cases where the government wants to force people to violate their religion. I mean, it's the ultimate intolerance, and we've seen it in lots of examples. I mean, the wedding cakes, the bakers.
This is the Christian baker in Colorado who's forced to bake a cake, even though he believes that gay marriage is wrong. It violates his conscience, but they're going to make him do it.
We have clients from Oregon that had the same situation with custom wedding cakes. You'll find that in every case, they serve everybody. They serve every LGBT person. It's just when they're asked to endorse certain messages, they can't endorse that there's a problem. Do you really want the government to force people to say things they don't want to say? Does anybody really believe that the government should punish a black baker because he won't bake a cake for the Klan rally? They're trying to force people to engage in affirmative actions that violate their conscience.
Isn't this part of the political strategy of the activist left?
Yeah, it's the ultimate intolerance. The idea of trying to use the power of the government to force somebody who disagrees with you, that's as un-American as anything I can think of.
To me, the case of the Bladensburg Cross is a perfect representation of the absurdity.
Justices on the U.S. Supreme Court will decide whether a cross on public land in Maryland constitutes an illegal endorsement of religion by the government.
It's a veterans memorial that was put up almost 100 years ago by mothers who lost their sons in World War I and by the American Legion. But then, come along decades later, the American humanists said, hey, wait, you can't have this big cross on government land. Separation of church and state.
And if that point of view prevailed, couldn't one take the same logic to Arlington Cemetery?
Absolutely. One of the judges said, why don't we just cut the arms off the cross? Because that way we can keep it there and not have to tear it down, but, quote, nobody will be offended. Well, I think a lot of people would be offended. You would have to go into every community of every state of this country and tear down the crosses, the Stars of David, the religious symbols.
In a stunning victory for Shackelford and the veterans, the Supreme Court ruled 7-2 that the Bladensburg Cross must stay. This shows the importance of keeping the Supreme Court. Our basic liberties depend on it. The First Amendment protects not just religious freedom, but also freedom of speech. That's also under assault, as journalist Andy No discovered.
Let's talk about the fateful day where you were covering Antifa. What happened?
While walking with the people who were demonstrating, they were chanting, "No hate, no fear." No hate, no fear! What happened next was complete anarchy and chaos. A group of people first hit me in the back of the head really hard. That knocked me forward. And before I could even catch my footing, then all the hits kept coming. When I thought the beating was over, it was just the first half. The second half was then the mob throwing hard objects at me. And at the end of the day, I ended up in a hospital diagnosed with a brain hemorrhage.
Here you are, you're not a fascist. What scares them about you?
Because I have dedicated my journalism work to exposing their violent extremism, exposing their links to the mainstream left.
When pushed, self-defense is a legitimate response to white supremacist and neo-Nazi violence.
They are strictly principled anti-fascists.
There are certainly aspects of them that are true to a cause. That is a good cause.
It says it right in the name, Antifa, anti-fascism, which is what they were there fighting.
The original Antifa started as a paramilitary connected to the German Communist Party in the interwar years. The original Antifa described themselves as anti-fascist, but what they really meant was that they were against those who were critical of communism. The original Antifa actually didn't oppose Nazis so much. Who they opposed was the Social Democrats, the center-left party, the liberals.
No Trump, no fascist USA!
Anybody who pushes back is deemed a fascist. Me, for example.
These socialist thugs are the true descendants of Mussolini's black shirts and Hitler's brown shirts. They exploited the injustice of the killing of a black man, George Floyd, to unleash a national wave of violence and terror. Trump declared them a domestic terrorist organization, putting Antifa in the same camp as ISIS and Al-Qaeda. The near enemy and the far enemy working toward the same end. The socialist left and the Democrats want us to grovel, to make us into worms. They want us to repeat what they say and believe it, even if it's 2 + 2 = 5. The British writer George Orwell, himself a man of the left, recognized that all forms of socialism become totalitarian. In his dystopian novel 1984, Lies Pass for Truth, freedom is defined as slavery, and the main character, Winston, is ground into dust by the all-powerful state, Big Brother.
The turning point has come. I shall save you. I shall make you perfect.
That was 40. You see, the dial goes to 100. You are clinging to a disease under the impression that it is a virtue. You prefer to be a minority of one. You also believe that the nature of reality is self-evident, but I tell you, Winston, that reality is not external. It does not exist in the individual mind, only in the mind of the state, which is collective and immortal. Do you remember writing in your diary that freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 make 4?
Yes.
How many fingers am I holding up, Winston?
4.
And if the state says this is not 4, but 5, then how many fingers?
4.
How many fingers?
4! 4!
How many fingers? How many fingers, Winston? How many fingers, Winston?
5!
You're only saying that because you want the pain to stop.
I want to see 5!
Are you trying to persuade me that you see 5? Or do you really want to see 5?
I can see them!
How many fingers am I holding up, Winston?
5.
We are not content with negative obedience, nor even the most abject submission. When finally you surrender to us, it must be of your own free will. Before we end the session, do you have any questions? It is switched off. Do you have a question?
What is 2 + 2?
Whatever the state says it is. Anything else?
Does Big Brother exist?
Of course he exists. The state exists. Big Brother is the embodiment of the state.
Does he exist in the same way that I exist?
You do not exist. Want a vision of the future, Winston? Imagine a boot stamping a human face forever.
Lincoln was a moderate man who found himself in an immoderate situation. The Democratic Party in the 1850s had become gangsterized. Lincoln realized he would have to do things differently. Early in the war, the Confederates passed an order that every black Union soldier captured would be executed. In response, Lincoln signed an executive order.
It is therefore ordered that for every soldier of the United States killed in violation of the laws of war, a rebel soldier shall be executed. Order of Retaliation, July 30th, 1863.
Why would a moderate man sign such an order? Because he recognized that he had to do to them what they were doing to him. Otherwise, they would never stop. Lincoln died defending the American dream against slavery. What price are we willing to pay to protect our American dream against the new form of slavery that is socialism?
to fight some capitalism with some basic socialistic program.
Oh, shut up.
Just as Lincoln stood up to the Democrats, Reagan stood up to the radical left.
This has to stop, and it has to stop like the day before yesterday.
Reagan lived in a different time, and a different tone was appropriate. If Trump appears to be a mud wrestler, it's not because he created all this chaos and division. It created him.
I think people have always seen me as a fighter. They know that I don't take a lot of crap from people.
I think a lot of people are tired of watching other countries ripping off the United States.
Next time they fire so much as a bullet at one of our ships, we ought to go in and take over their oil.
Trump's fighting spirit goes way back. He doesn't run from problems, he runs toward them. In 1991, Trump was out for a ride in the town.
Oh my God! Stop being mugged!
Stop the car! Hey, put the bat down!
Call the cops!
I didn't do nothing, Mr. Trump.
What do you mean you're doing nothing? You're hitting the guy over the head with a bat!
Drinks in Metropolitan.
Marla, call the police.
My whole life I've been a fighter, and now I'm going to fight for you. We're going to fight.
He fights because he knows what's at stake.
America is the place where anyone can rise. And here, on this land, on this soil, on this continent, the most incredible dreams come true. This nation is our canvas, and this country is our masterpiece. We look at tomorrow and see unlimited frontiers just waiting to be explored. Our brightest discoveries are not yet known. Our spirit is still young. The sun is still rising. God's grace is still shining. And my fellow Americans, the best is yet to come.
With Trump as our leader, we will leave socialism on the ash heap of history.
This man is fighting for us, so I will continue to fight for him and to fight for what is right.
Are you going to give up?
Absolutely not. America's worth fighting for.
America is just not worth fighting for. I think it's worth even dying for.
I will never give up because life is worth fighting for.
I've never been more encouraged about what I see happening, the fact that I see us winning.
America was founded on liberty and independence, and not government coercion, domination, and control. We are born free, and we will stay free.